The thoughts, views, and comments expressed by Sidebar, its guests, callers, and advisors are not necessarily those of the management, ownership, or production unit of ILS Verizon Media Group. Sidebar, a 103.5 The Beat podcast, is a production of ILTV Studios and may not be reproduced or represented, in part or in its entirety, without the express written consent of Verizon Media Group. Sidebar is the intellectual property of Verizon Media Group. Copyright 2024. All rights reserved.
Welcome to Sidebar, a 103 The Beat podcast powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna. I wasn't 1,000% certain of what I wanted to talk about today because I got like a couple things in my head that I really wanted to talk with you about. But I also don't want to be inflammatory. But I think the best possible course of action is to, sometimes you just have to do stuff, right? I hope you don't get arrested. There are times when, out of, I'm not going to say misplaced empathy, but we find ourselves roused by the words of other people. And I know it's kind of funny that somebody who you probably know mostly through talking to you, but sometimes we find ourselves roused through the words of persons to a battle that has nearly nothing to do with us. It is not something that you are concerned about or with, but you think that this is a wrong that needs to be righted. And honestly, that inclination that you have, that feeling in your heart that you have to help this person or this cause is righteous, and this is a battle that must be fought, that is good. That thing, that impetus that you feel to move in that direction, that is a good thing. That's not something that you should quell or quench or make it go away. Like, that is the right thing. But if the world is made up of 80% good and people, like you have some people that are, this is a good person. This person does nice things and is a nice person, and you don't have to lie at their funeral or in their obituary. And then, a bunch of people who the highlight of their obituary was they went to school. So the world is made up of 90% of those. And then there's 10% of horrible people that laugh when a baby falls. And they think that watching a car crash is the most entertaining thing. And they go to cockfights. And there's a violence inside their mind that it's like, yes, drink the blood of the innocent. Those people, that 10%, they find good things. In the same way a tick finds blood, in the same way mosquitoes find blood, in the same way vampires find blood. They find good things and they latch on and they lap from it. And so while this is a good thought, a good position, a good action to have, where it doesn't have to necessarily be about you. You see something wrong or you perceive something is wrong and you want to take an action towards it, to right it, and make the world a better place. There are going to be people who wish to take advantage of that for their own selfish gain, for chaos, because they're mentally unwell, for any numerous sort of reasons. And I think it is important that we always be able to question, why are we doing something? Why is this thing happening? What is the purpose of this thing? Before we allow somebody to lead us into helping them to tear down a fence, only to find out that they wanted to tear down the fence so that they could break into this person's yard. If that analogy makes sense. There are people in this world who don't care about the good of others, but they will put on a coat and pretend as though they do. And it is important for us to figure out, is this battle that I'm fighting on behalf of somebody else actually the right battle? Is this call that I am lending my voice to the right call? I feel like if you know me, or if you're familiar with me, if you've heard my voice before, you know that I've lent my voice to many a thing. And some of those things I don't regret. Like charity work and helping to bring awareness to an organization or an event that, needs more publicity. I don't have an issue with those things. But then there were times where, oh God, I'm ashamed of it, where particularly political things, where you're told one thing and then later on, when the tables have been turned and the people who you've helped to fight the big bad evil are now at the table, they say, oh, yeah, no, that's just how it works. And so nothing actually changes. And the thing that they told you they needed to change is actually just a function of the system. That is just how the system works. Those are the hard fought lessons. See where the VAT money gone, and those other pointless political slogans that for some reason disappeared as soon as other political parties got into power. Anyway, I say all that to say, there are times where talk show hosts, the man on the street, reporters, social media persons, all sorts of people are pointing you left or right, particularly in this election season, where people are looking for something to hold on to. And as a sidebar, I think that because of our flawed system, that of course, right before an election is called or happens, this is the apex moment of power for the average human person, because everybody is looking for a vote. Everybody feels beholden to finally the masses. And so when people come around, you're like, oh, well, what about this? What about that? And this is the one time where it's like, okay, if we do this, everybody's on the back foot. So they don't have the power to threaten me as much as before. And I can threaten them and say, oh, we vote you out, or you won't get in, or whatever version of that it is. But I worry. I worry about people who are going to take advantage of our good nature to push an agenda that will not move us forward, that will not even move us. They don't wish to abolish the monarchy. They don't want to get rid of a king. They just want to sit in the throne. They don't want the world to be better. They just want to be in charge. And they actually like the world broken because they make a lot of money off the world being broken. And so I think one of the things I want to tell you today is if some random person, some unwashed Philistine, is posting a bunch of random videos online telling you that you should stand up against this group of people or this person, you got to ask yourself, why is this the only course of action available to you, somebody who could probably afford a lawyer? Why is this the only course of action available to you? And why is this the first time I'm seeing you as a human being? I've never seen you at any of the marches or the rallies, you know? It's just weird. It's one of those weird things. It's one of those weird things. But in this moment of election time, I'm very concerned about it. Specifically, I'm in a Luther right now, by the way. I'm sure by now, of course you guys have seen the videos. This is ILTV. You guys, it's probably been in every newscast and definitely on Shanique's show. So, you know, there's that. But you got to question yourself sometimes. Are people using our prejudice against us, but also using our good nature against us? And where does that put us in the grand scheme of things? Because we are out here sometimes fighting the battles for people that the people who we think we're fighting for, they don't actually care. They don't actually want this battle to be fought. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to speak with a little less subterfuge. The sun is coming up. It's getting in my eye. But we're going to take a quick break. You are watching and listening to Sidebar, a 103 to B podcast powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sidebar, 103 to B podcast powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna here on the beautiful island of Eleuthera. And I am pondering the idea of people fighting other people's battles and it being used for evil. That's the only way I can phrase it. And okay, so let's just get to it, all right? Let me ask you a question. You think people want to live in shanty towns? Like, do you think that that is an aspiration? And I know that there are people out there who think that it is a cultural thing that some people wish to live in squalor, as opposed to being that this is a circumstance that some people find themselves in. Ask yourself honestly, if there's any human being that wants to live in what we colloquially call a shanty town, Is that an actual thing? And I realized that by phrasing the question that way, I've also opened up the door for people to then dehumanize and say, see, people who live in shanty towns aren't human. But here's the thing. I don't think, and it has never been my experience, that the persons who live in these conditions wish to remain in these conditions. There are times where, and I'm certain there are people who are like, in exhaustion, they give up. There are people who, this is all I've ever known, and so I did not know that I could aspire. Personal story, I don't think that I've ever thought about marriage before the age of 27, 28, because it never occurred to me. Well, one, I didn't think I was going to live that long. I thought I'd be dead by 25, which explains the recklessness of my youth. But also, I didn't, what gal I was going to trick into marrying me was the thought process. So there was no, oh, I wonder what it would be like, and this is the type of house I want, and my kids. I never aspired to that, mostly because I never saw it, and so I did not think it to be a potential reality. If somebody were to ask me, oh, what type of suit would you like to wear at your wedding? Which is such a weird thing. I think nobody asks men that. I would have had no answer. I would have had no thought, because I'd never put any thought into it until I started dating a Long Island gal. But anyway, the point is, if somebody had come to me before then and said, you never thought about getting married, you must want to be perpetually single, you must never want this thing. It's like, no, it never occurred to me. And so I think that there are also circumstances where this is all I've ever known, so I didn't know beyond this. But it's not a monolith. It's not the same thing across the board. I mean, there are different situations. But generally speaking, I do not think, or at least in my limited estimation, in my limited experience in life, I've never met somebody who lived in an unregulated community to be like, I am happy to be here. This is where I want to be. There are persons who are there and they're like, this is temporary. This is until I can get a proper foothold and then move forward. And then, so however one might think about persons who live within these communities, because there are some people saying all limitations, which still wouldn't change the fact that they're human beings, and human beings deserve to live in humane conditions, as well as the effects of an unregulated community, because it's regulated for a reason. Like, if you leave it up to whatever, if you just leave it up to human nature, we're all going to just throw up a house or a tent or a shelter wherever and poop wherever, drink wherever, farm wherever. And it's not until people start getting sick that we're like, oh no, we shouldn't have done that. But that's the reason why we have these rules about, okay, you can't have houses this close together, because if one catches on fire, they're all going to burn down because they're too close. They're touching each other. You got to have this much space between them so that if something were to happen, people can evacuate. Even in terms of, there's building codes to say, you cannot rent a structure that doesn't have a hallway, that doesn't have exit points, that doesn't have windows, because this is a hazard. Someone's going to die. And a human life is worth more than whatever you're collecting for rent. And so all these things exist for a reason, in order to avoid things, because people who've experienced it, people who've studied this, have figured out, okay, this is the minimum that you need for us to not all die of cholera. This is the minimum amount that you need for us to not all die in a giant kitchen fire run out of control and burn down the whole entire community. And so I don't think that the people who are in these communities necessarily wish to be in that type of community. It may be a situation of economics. It may be a situation of, well, I didn't know there's something else available to me. There's any numerous circumstances that people find themselves in those type of situations. When you have somebody arguing for the existence of that community, you have to ask yourself, well, why? Is it that you are arguing for it because this is a stopgap measure until we are able to get affordable housing for all? And if so, then let's both fight on either end and meet in the middle. Let's get the pressure on the low-cost housing for everybody. And betwixt me and you, all right, in this circumstance, with these unregulated communities, the information is all out there. Everyone who you see, whenever you see the news media have the cameras on people or whatever, those persons that you are seeing there all have some sort of legal status within the country. Some of them are Bahamians, some of them are permanent residents, some of them are persons with work permits. But they all have legal permission to be within the country. They are often assisted with social services because however you feel about any of the governments, none of the governments are so cool and heartless to be like, and now go live in a hole on the side of the road or something. They're like, hey, this structure is a problem. Everything about this is a problem. This is going to affect the surrounding communities. And in order to curtail this, this needs to go. If you need a brief moment of help to get from point A to point C, here's point B. And they offer like, okay, here's a place that you can stay until you're able to find regulated shelter, AKA like a normal apartment or a house or whatever it might be. And here's the thing, the average Bahamian don't have a house. If there was a, I wish I had the newspaper with me, but there was an article, I saw it on TikTok. I wish that I had, you know what, I might just insert, I won't insert it. But the amount of houses sold in 2025 and the price at which they were sold tells me that they were not sold to the average Bahamian, that they weren't sold to Bahamians generally. Like, it might be a couple of Bahamians inside there, but based on those prices and those numbers, those homes were sold to second homeowners who are probably millionaires and billionaires. So, which one of us has a house? Anyway, I got a little distracted. But moving persons out of the unregulated community, aka the shantytown, into here's a place, stable. It has actual walls. It has actual plumbing. It's not just a pipe coming out of your house into the ground, into the water system. It has enough space between one structure and the other structure so that you actually, you might not have a giant yard, but when you walk out, you're not walking literally into somebody else's home. That's what's happening now. It's a slow process because these things are sensitive and they have to be done sensitively. And honestly, generally speaking, when all this information is out there, but when you go into an unregulated community and they're posting the signs that say, okay, this has been deemed not humans should not be living in this type of area. In 6 months, this is going to be gone. In 4 months, it's going to be gone. This is official notice. The majority of persons who are in those communities tend to leave. You might have a couple people who, and honestly, the people who stay, they are behemoth. That is the most behemoth thing, because they're like, the government ain't gonna do nothing. And that's the most behemoth attitude that you could have. But all the other people, they leave, all right? And they go find residence elsewhere. A lot of times they go find apartments or go live with family who live in apartments. And it's like, okay, we've moved from point A to point B or point C. You know, we were told that this was an easy route and this is the way to do it. But apparently there's more to it, and there's other things that we can do and other avenues available to us. And sometimes that's all it takes, is for persons to know that there are other avenues available for them. I must question then, who wants these structures and these communities to continue? Who would go and fly from where they are, claiming that their home is under attack, on a random island, let's say Knowles Island, all right? They fly from Knowles Island to New Providence to sit on one of the most popular talk shows to say that they are being attacked or whatever. What would be the justification for that person or persons, hypothetically, to want to do such a thing? What? And I'm just throwing it out there. Once again, this is all hypothetical. Could it be that that person is profiting so much? Could it be that they are charging, because betwixt me and you, and this is just between me and you, right? The way shantytowns usually work, unregulated communities usually work, is that the person who owns the lease or the deed or the title to the property is renting out plots of land per week to individuals. They say, hey, you could have this square and you can do whatever you want to do in that square. It is $40 a week, $100 a week, $200 a week, whatever it is, whatever they feel. That's how it usually works. There are some persons, on the other hand, who decide, no, we're going to do it by the head. So $100 per head, so every individual that lives within this area, I need $100 for that person. And this is one of those situations where sometimes being poor, being of a certain class, you spend more money than you would if you'd been born in a different class. It's the same argument about the shoes, right? Where a poor person might buy a pair of $20 shoes 4 times in 1 year, and a rich person buys one pair of $200 shoes and they last them for 5 years. And so now I spent hundreds more than you spent on your Louis Vuittons, because I got to keep buying the shoes over and over and over because my cheap shoes keep falling apart. And so I'm actually spending more money and wasting more money, right? And so now you have these people, you got to ask the question, is this person profiting somehow that they are fighting so hard? They're like, oh, we have to do X, Y, and Z. Because if you are really doing, you know what? This is all hypothetical, so I'm not gonna, because it's hypothetical. This is hypothetical. I don't know. I don't know what's in anyone's heart. So let me not say that. But if you are making $100 a head off of persons, you're going to want to pack in as many people in a space that probably was not made for that many people to exist simultaneously. It is a matter of physics that this is too many people in one space. This is going to cause illness and harm and put vulnerable persons like children and women in danger, because we are stacking bodies on top of bodies. But if you don't think of those persons as people, it doesn't matter. You look at them and you see dollar signs. And so now you're like, oh man, I need to get as many sardines in this can as humanly possible because that's going to make me more money. But when the government comes to say this has to stop because this is a problem, I'm going to spin it as the government doesn't like Haitians, that the government doesn't like poor people, that the government wants to destroy poor, innocent Bahamians who are just trying to make it. And life is hard. And so you got to ask yourself, before we lend our voices to those people, before we lend our platforms to those type of people, particularly when we have the ability to do the research, to pick up a phone and to text the minister responsible, should we? Should we just give our platform to that person? Should we then just say, yeah, man, that's cool? I guess there were no transgenders available that day. Let's take a break. You are watching and listening to Sidebar, a 103 The Beat podcast powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna. We'll be right back.
7.5 years, but I walk in here all of a sudden, total stranger. I'm calling you Rick and Sheila. Like,
I win. At Island Lock, we take sports seriously. Get ready to experience the thrill of winning anytime and any place. Bet in real time and live the thrill of every play while watching your winnings stack up. It's your chance to score big with fast payouts and a world-class experience. Get in the game and bet the Bahamian way with Island Lock Sportsbook.
Welcome to Paradise Premium Foods, where exceptional taste meets everyday convenience. Right in the heart of Hurricane Hole Plaza, whether you're planning a beachside brunch, an intimate dinner, or simply restocking your favorites, we offer only the finest selection of local and imported goods, handpicked for quality, freshness, and flavor. At Paradise Premium Foods, shopping is effortless, service is personal, and every visit feels like a treat. From gourmet meals to go to organic essentials and indulgent treats, this is your neighborhood market elevated. Live well, eat better. Discover Paradise Premium Foods, now open at Hurricane Hole Plaza, Paradise Island. Paradise Premium Foods. Taste the difference.
Welcome back to Sidebar, the 103 The Beat podcast powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna. Today I am somewhere in North Eleuthera ranting about how we shouldn't allow persons who may not have the best interests of the general public in mind, whether that be politicians or whether that be persons who are slumlords, hypothetically, allegedly, whatever word you want to throw behind that, use us to further their agenda. That's the whole sentence. I thought there was more after it, but that's the entire sentence. And while we started the conversation by saying, okay, sometimes this happens because people are taking advantage of our good nature. There's also the inverse of that. There are times where people are taking advantage of, and we cannot have this conversation in all earnest if we don't address the fact that there are, for some people, their darker nature, their baser nature, is being taken advantage of to further the agenda. And so here's the thing. If you hate somebody, if you hate something, I could, that's easy for me to get you to move in my direction. Because now if I know that moves you, then okay, all I gotta do is just say, hey, man, broccoli, am I right? We gotta get rid of all this broccoli in this country. Broccoli just on the side of the road. You know, cabbage ain't really cabbage. Cabbage is the type of broccoli. Next thing you know, I got you marching on Bay Street saying broccoli taking our jobs and too much broccoli born inside the hospital. And why every time you see a valedictorian, their last name is broccoli or spinach or kale or cauliflower, and why there's so much broccoli in the country, all of this type of, you understand what I'm saying? It is very easy for me to then convince you to send me $1, to give me some money for my silly political t-shirts, for when you see me on the side of the road in the hot sun. Well, not me, because I would never do that as the leader. I would send out my minions to have a dollar day with the 5-gallon jugs on the side of the road by the light to collect dollars because you hate broccoli that much. I want to ask you a question, because let's address your dislike. It's not even a discomfort, your dislike of broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage and kale and all it's like 20 different things that all descend from the same plant. But let's talk about your hatred of this. Where does that come from? Where is that stemming from? And I've had Eleuthera is a very long island. And sometimes driving from point A to point B is a 2-hour drive in the dark, alone with your thoughts. And because I don't really like Sirius XM radio, which is apparently what you can catch when you're driving through the shallows and the marshes in the dark. Sorry. Anyway, I had a thought, and I was like, is it possible that, trying to get out the sun, is it possible that sometimes you hate something because that's what you is? And what do I mean by that? Okay, so it is, because there's often this thing that people do where they say, oh, the people who hate gay people are secretly gay. And while, once again, the world is a complicated place, that may be a circumstance. I don't think that is the average person who hates gay people. I don't think that applies, like that it's a one of one. Because people hate other things too. So why do people hate? Yeah, okay, gay people, transgender people, women. Because don't get me wrong, there are men who hate women and they don't wish to become a woman, but they do hate women. There are people who hate Haitians, they hate all foreigners, but especially Haitians. There are people who hate Bahamians. They hate poor people. They hate dark people. They hate black people of any country, of any continent, including own family members. There are people who hate other people that have no power to hurt them, that they bought a version of reality that doesn't exist for the sole purpose of justifying a pre-existing condition of hatred. Because the statistics don't bear out that Haitians have more children than Bahamians. Bahamians do have, at least not any significant amount. Now, if somebody comes and says, all right, well, it's changed since the last time you've looked at it, I'm willing to retract that statement. But the last time I looked at it, it's not of any significant more. But you may have had a nurse have a day when the only persons that were there were persons of Haitian descent. And so that story has been echoed and echoed always and constantly on every talk show because it's a salacious story. It's a fun little tidbit to justify the way we feel about things already. But why? I'm more concerned about the upsetness that one finds themselves with. Why do you hate these people, right? You see, and like, I feel like Haitian is on the far end of the spectrum because Bahamians can easily just say, okay, well, they're not one of us, right? And so I will give you that for this moment. That's way more complicated than that because everybody who we call a Haitian is not necessarily not a Bahamian. But no, for the sake of this argument, let's leave that over there. Let's deal with the ones that are Bahamian, but you still have other disgust for them. And you allow talk shows to milk that for the purposes of selling commercials and ads. What is the reason for your hatred of these other groups? And I suspect, and I could be wrong, so you can help me out if I am wrong, but I suspect that it is because secretly you identify with them. And there is a level of, like, you see something in them and it resonates with you and you hate that. And you don't even realize it on a conscious level, but on an unconscious level, you are upset. And so your mind is like, oh, I'm upset with something. I must be upset with them. And what do I mean by that? Okay, so you see a flamboyant gay dude and you like, that man like man. He's technically, I guess, a minority in society. And you say, yeah, but something wrong with that. And it just, like, it makes sense in your head. Okay. Now we feel at ease. I ain't like him. He is a them. He over there. You see a woman complaining about pay and not feeling safe in society and trying to take away the little bit of power that you have when you follow her in a car and say, where you going, sweetie? Man, you look too good to be walking by yourself, man. Man, what you saying, man? What you saying? And you follow her down the dark road, harassing her all the way there. And you're like, these women, they don't understand how hard it is to be a man. With they fake hair and they dress from Shein and not having to pay for dinner, and they can live with their mommy, and ain't nobody can care about that. But then they want me to have treehouse and all. And so that's a them. That's a they over there. They are not one of you. And then you see people living in squalor and utter poverty, and you say, yeah, babe, they should do better. Man, they just what? That's a they, them. What do all those people have in common with you? I would dare hazard a guess that we are all oppressed. There's a giant we, and that encapsulates people that are not you and that live completely different lives from you. But the thing that we share is that we are all oppressed. And I think the frustration, I have to hurry up, rain clouds are coming. The thing that we share, the frustration that we have in our hearts is that The gay do it. It is tangible. You can see what it is that is causing his oppression. And so you could point to it and you say, man, if only he would stop being gay, he'd have a great life. The woman, you could see it's a tangible thing. What is causing her oppression? And you say, if she would just be more conservative and find a husband and, you know, not be attractive, then she would no longer be oppressed. She would have a better chance of not being oppressed. The poor people just need to work harder and they need to get a better job and they need to live better. And you see what it is. But for you, who would like to call themselves middle class, and I had this argument over the Christmas break with my niece where, why do we need so many different labels to divide us? But once again, the rain is coming. I don't have time to get into that. Maybe next week. But for you who consider yourself middle class, you say to yourself, I don't have that tangible thing, that wonderful thing that I could just say, this is the problem, and therefore, if I correct this, all will be well. And the truth is, you can't. The people who are oppressing you will find a way to oppress you no matter what. What they've done is they've separated us, they've segmented us in such a way that we then think that that person's problem is this person, it doesn't matter. These are all superficial, minute differences between us, right? That mean nothing in the grand scheme of things. I promise you, if Haitians did not exist, we would find, well, not we, that evil 10% would find a way to exploit the lowest earning Bahamians in the same way. And in a way they do. I promise you that if there were no gay people, we would find a way to oppress whatever sexuality that 10% wasn't a part of. Because what it really is as long as we are all in silos away from each other, we can't get together and unionize. If the people in the janitors ain't talking to the middle managers and everybody in between, nobody know what anybody making. Nobody know how much the company making. Nobody understands, oh, this company doesn't work because all we do is sell sandwiches. But if all of us who know how to make the sandwiches up and left and went somewhere else and made our own sandwiches and owned the factory, we would all be paid significantly better. The sandwiches would be improved because we know what the customers like, and we hear when the customers complain about, oh, why y'all keep on changing the fries? Leave the fries alone. We know when the customers say, oh, why is the apple pie getting smaller? Or why is this? We know all that stuff. We don't need this. But because we are divided, and the only people we are talking to is the evil 10%, what happens is that evil 10% convince us that this is security. Stay here with me in this dilapidated shanty town. It's scary out there. But if you give me $100 per head, you'll be safe here in this place where the roof leaks, the walls fall apart, there is no foundation. And when the government comes and says, this isn't safe for you or any of your neighbors, some persons are going to say, wow, you're right. Thank you. Thank you for showing me that. And then other persons are going to invite the slumlord onto their TV show to have 5 minutes because they'll boost their ratings for a day. Anyway, true God, there's a giant cloud headed this way, which stopping the sun, but it also means I need to go inside. So once again, this has been Sidebar, the 103 to B podcast powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna, true God still.
So you want a space. But not just any space. You need something with a little more potential. So how about 1,000 square feet of room to play with? Superb audio and video production capability, digital LED wall, full lighting grid, and about 124 seats to accommodate a full studio audience, with so many other features. Make us your home for your next concert, conference, and so much more. Honestly, the possibilities are endless. Here at ILTV Studios, we'd love to bring your next event to life. So what do you say? Do you want our space?